Welcome back to Timeless Mindset for this very special episode. 23 lessons, 23 years. It's my birthday today, September the 10th. This will be coming out in a few weeks, but just an hour to reflect on some of the lessons and learnings along the way. But before we get into those, I do want to send a heartfelt appreciation to whoever's listening and whatever support you give me. It is the reason that I continue to do what I do. It's the impact I have on other people. It's the relationships I build through the podcast. And it's the power of connecting with people and their stories and going through life and trying to understand this chaos that is human life and this existence that we're in. It's the reason I did start the podcast was to connect with people, to learn from people, because I felt misunderstood. I didn't really understand what was going on in my head, and I internalized a lot. I overthought a lot. I felt like a victim in some ways, but I didn't want to live that way anymore. I had this inner calling, I wanted more. And I took that courageous move to do something different, go out of my comfort zone. And it's kickstarted this incredible journey that continues to play out, which I'm so happy to be a part of. It's not easy. It's not smooth, as you know. Life is never like that, but I'm really content with this path I'm on and the people I've met along the way, the lessons I've learned, and the life that I'm building. It's just, it's special. And I'm really, really grateful for you and your support. Like I said, relationships and human connection is so pivotal to life. And this will be a nice moment to reflect on some of the really powerful lessons that I've learned and how they've, changed my life and changed my mindset. So let's begin. Number 1, the lows you experience provide the momentum for the highs. Everyone is going to go through pain, and I've resisted a lot of pain. I used to numb myself a lot. I didn't want to go through that feeling phase of this is shit. I feel misunderstood, or I don't feel loved, or I feel frustrated, disappointed, embarrassed. I really numbed that emotion because it's so easy to distract yourself in the modern era nowadays. We have access to digital dopamine and it's easier to escape. And I escaped. And the reason I overthought a lot and what a lot of overthinking comes from is underfeeling. I struggled to actually feel it. But what I learned through the podcasting is it actually prevented me from using that as fuel, because life is a roller coaster. And if you don't allow yourself to feel that and you don't allow yourself to go down, you aren't going to get that powerful rebound, because pain is fuel. And I think a lot of people use that fuel sometimes to sink themselves further or plateau themselves. And I did that for a long time. I'm still on this journey of trying to figure out how to use pain and go through things and feel it, because it's so easy to distract yourself and not sit with it because it's easier. It's something you find yourself going back to. And I have to pull myself up with self-awareness. Is this the right thing to do? And I think through learning people's stories is if they've gone through pain. I think I used to somehow believe that I was the only one who felt this way, or the only one who experienced life the way I experienced it. So it's really easy to create a victim story. And there are people who have gone through so much worse than me and yet have come out on the other side learning the powerful lessons and transforming their lives. So hearing people's story, hearing people lose people in their life, I've never experienced grief like some people have. And, they've lost businesses, they've been heartbroken, and they've been able to change their life so incredibly and learn such powerful lessons from it. And I'm thinking, if they can do it, so can I. And I think that mindset shift, that so can I, it takes a bit of action. It takes a bit of courage to believe that you can do that. But when you do start to take action, you'll realize the power in using the lows to catapult your life. And you have such a better appreciation for the positive moments in life when you've gone through the shit. The only reason right now in my relationship that I'm able to feel so loved and connected is because I've had the opposite. I've had heartbreak. I've had feelings of being so isolated and misunderstood. And the same thing for, I guess, any emotion, right? It's on a spectrum from like one extreme to the other. So when you've gone through the shit, it now gives you not only the fuel to experience the opposite, it gives you the depth, it gives you that understanding of what it's like. So I think if you can learn to embrace that discomfort, not only will it help you rebound, it just gives you such a greater appreciation, because that bandwidth, right? The gap between the highs and the lows has been so much greater. But I think a lot of people, including myself, this is the journey I was talking about. We close ourselves off from feeling that low. We distract ourselves, we pretend we're fine, and we don't allow ourselves to accept truly what we're going through, which not only means we don't get to experience the rebound, but we don't actually understand the emotion itself because we're resisting what it is. And it's hard, right? I know what you're thinking, like it's easier said than done, but all it takes is awareness. And when you have awareness, you're allowing yourself to make choices that allow you to start changing your life. It doesn't happen in one moment. You aren't going to come to this epiphany. Some do, but it takes time. I think it takes a lot of time and awareness to start thinking about emotions, because an emotion is a feeling, but I think I'm such a thinker. So I use my thinking as a way to make better choices. So I thought, okay, hyper awareness is something I have. I find it really hard to switch off my mind. So I'm going to use that self-awareness, that overthinking in a positive way. I'm going to allow it to redirect my attention to feeling more. And it's hard. And sometimes I catch myself playing out these mental masturbation stories and not actually sinking into the feeling. But when you have that awareness, it breeds the opportunity to catch yourself out and allow yourself to sink into the feeling. So, yeah. The difference between anxiety and excitement is your level of confidence. The nervous system, whenever we're going outside our comfort zone or whenever we're doing something that is a bit scary, we have this feeling, right? This feeling of, oh, that you know what it's like. Everyone has had that feeling, right? It's almost like when you have too much caffeine. You're a bit jittery. You're a bit like, it's hard to describe because it is such a feeling of like anxiousness. And the difference between whether you are excited or whether you are anxious to do something, whether that's me doing a podcast, you asking that girl out, you starting a new business, you doing something that is unfamiliar or familiar but new, right? Like, are you nervous for a sporting game? Are you nervous to go out on a date with your partner? Like, I really believe it is the same feeling that the nervous system gives, right? But I think the difference between whether you believe you are anxious about the event or confident excited, all stems from your level of confidence. So when you have this belief that not only are you going to be okay, but you have confidence in yourself and belief in yourself, that same feeling gets interpreted as confidence. Now, the powerful lesson in this is I've gone through so many of the exact same situations, especially podcasting. I used to be so nervous when I started. I was like, is everything recording? Is the equipment working? Do I ask the right questions to the guest? That was anxiety, like genuine anxiety, panic. I wasn't really confident, but I've had a very, very similar feeling pop up when I interview certain guests. It's the same feeling, but I'm like, oh my God, I've done so many of these. I have evidence. I'm actually pretty confident. Like, I've done so many interviews. I know I have a belief in myself to ask good questions. So I don't really feel nervous or anxious, but why do I feel the same way? I'm excited, actually. I'm really excited to have this conversation. But I tell myself the story now that I'm confident. But I'm excited now. I'm excited. And the difference is it doesn't spiral, because what happens when we go into that anxious feedback cycle is doubt starts to get introduced, right? And doubt is the precursor to fear. And then when fear comes in, it's pretty hard to stop that cycle of thinking. It becomes catastrophic thinking. What if this happens? And as soon as you get into the what ifs, it's really, really hard to retreat. So how can we stop it? How did I learn to interpret that same feeling and turn it into excitement? Because why should I go through life experiencing anxiety and stress for something I should love? Like, I'm doing podcasting because it's a passion. I love it, but I care so much about it. I want it to go well. So to me, I had to have confidence. I had to have belief, but the difference in the feeling and the story I told myself made all the difference. So how did I turn it around? I think action. You got to build that evidence. And I think once you've built a stack of evidence and proof that you can do something, then you start to use that mind muscle. And if you don't have confidence, right? Like if you aren't confident, that's totally okay. I think you have to tap into courage because you aren't going to have that belief or evidence that you can do it. And that's fine. And I've had to do that throughout so much of my podcasting journey. I haven't done many episodes, right? When you start a podcast, you have no proof that the podcast is going to go okay and it's going to be a good conversation. So you have to step into courage. And you still have to step into courage when you're doing interviews. But I think when you have that same feeling of anxiety in whatever context you have in life, whether it's going to the gym for the first time, going out on a date with a new partner, having a difficult conversation with your parents, whatever that exact moment is, what is the story you're telling yourself? Are you telling yourself you're going to be okay? Or do you find yourself drifting into catastrophic thinking? It's important to bring awareness to that because I think that has a massive impact on how you feel. And the feedback loop on the negative is just debilitating. So yeah. Number 3, life is experienced in isolation but understood in context. Now, the reason this is so important is because all you have access to in life is the present moment, right? No one can disagree with that. But the present moment only makes sense given everything that we have gone through and the context of life. The stories that we tell ourselves based on, the things we have experienced. So what this really means is I learned this lesson because I spent so much of my life overthinking the future and using the past to shackle me down, to not put myself out there, to not believe I deserved a great life. Now, the power in this is, I think it's important to bring your attention to the present moment and understand that why you feel certain ways sometimes in this moment is not just because of this moment, but because of the stories that you tell yourself about things that have happened to you in the past. A lot of this can happen on a subconscious level, and it can take help to bring awareness to why that is, or help someone evoke those deeper stories. But just realize it's so incredible to think that what you're experiencing right now, like whether it's going out for a date with a partner or, starting a new business, a new podcast episode, like it only makes sense given what has happened in the past and what you're doing now. And sometimes extrapolating the current moment into the future and almost finding meaning for it, right? Like a lot of times we go through discomfort, we go through the pain because we tell ourselves that something's going to happen in the future in a positive way because of it. So life sometimes really makes sense given what has happened and what is going to happen. Now, the power in this is, I think we get to attach to that, and I do as well. I'm the biggest victim of overusing time to take me away from the present moment. But there's so much power in finding the love for whatever present moment you're going through. The other day I was working and on site and I was stacking about 1,200, 1,500 bricks, right? And this was over 4 or 5 hours. Probably not the greatest thing. And in my mind, like I have all these ambitions, and working labor is something that I'm doing at the moment, but I won't be doing forever. But I used to get so caught up in not being happy in the moment because I'm so obsessed about what I need to be doing and this pressure I'm putting onto myself for the future. Gareth told me this really powerful lesson. And the thing I love about podcasting is I sometimes hear these lessons from people and I don't actually learn that lesson in that moment. I don't go, oh yeah. But then I have that exact story, that exact thing happen in my life. And then I'm like, wow, that's exactly what Gareth was talking about in that episode. And it was, he had all these ambitions, but he was working at McDonald's and he really shifted his mindset to enjoying the present moment, regardless of all these ambitions he had. And that's exactly for my life. Now there's so much honest power in laboring and all that work, but my life isn't heading in that direction. But it's something I'm doing right now to earn some money. And it's like, why do I hate this so much? It's actually not that bad. Like in the present moment, like I'm out in the sun, I'm doing exercise, I'm with good people, yet I can't seem to enjoy it. And I'm like, what an opportunity to find presence for whatever I'm doing, because it's so easy to be present and love the moment when it's easy, right? Like it's easy. But when it's hard and you're doing something that isn't as comfortable, what story are you telling yourself? And I think a lot of the time we don't enjoy uncomfortable experiences. We don't enjoy the grind of studying, not because it is that hard itself, but because of the story that we tell ourselves. And I think if you can learn to love something that isn't living up to your dreams and your expectations, I think there's a certain power in being able to love and be present for any moment. Because when you are in those very enjoyable moments, like you're with your partner or you're exercising or you're with friends or you're doing this new business project, it becomes so easy to shift into presence and a love because it is so much easier to do. It's very similar to the first lesson I talked about between that bandwidth of the extreme emotions, right? Like, so I feel like if you can learn to be present when it's hard, it's going to become so easy to be present when it's easy. So it's a challenge, it's an opportunity, because I know for me, I just went into that mindset of, I'm only doing this for a future thing. And you justify what you're doing and you're not actually really present, you're so caught out of the moment. So finding a way to be present in whatever moment allows you to be more present in the easier moments. So I just think it's an important lesson, because it's like we experience life only the present moment, but it does only make sense with the whole grand scheme of life. But I think learning to love each moment, and look, that you're going to go through some terrible shit, and this is not to say learn to love that, but it means learn to embrace that, learn to surrender to what you're going through and not try to distract yourself by what you're going to do. And there's a difference. There's nothing wrong with being excited about your future and talking about those things you're going to do, but just ask yourself this question sometimes. Are you doing this to distract yourself from what you're currently experiencing? And the opportunity is, if you get good at embracing that hardness or the discomfort or whatever it is, your appreciation for the present moment is so much greater when you actually learn to embrace the discomfort. Because I know for me, whenever you go through shit and you're just distracting yourself, it puts this expectation on the future that it has to be something. And what I mean by this is, you go through life and you're not really present during those hard moments. You're distracting yourself and you're not really sinking into that feeling. And when you do go through the easier times, suddenly your mind is, oh, this is going to be easy now. And it puts an undue expectation on what you're going to do now to be this great, grand thing. So I think when you learn to just embrace and live presently, and you actually be present on this roller coaster, when you do get to the top of that roller coaster and you do have those amazing moments of peace and joy in life, like you are truly going to experience it. And I've learnt this with my self-awareness, and I'm like, holy shit, like you appreciate life to a whole new level when you can actually surrender to the present moment all the time. It takes a lot of practice, and I'm still at the beginning of that journey, but it's sort of this spiritual evolution I'm on, and it's allowed me to, embrace that roller coaster more. And it's fucking hard. I'm not saying it like it's easy, but I think it's an important thing. If you catch yourself drifting off all the time from hard moments, maybe the spiritual stuff is an area for growth, because I know for me, it's definitely. Number 4, knowledge isn't power, it's potential. I think when you go down the self-improvement route, it's really easy to get seduced, especially as a logical person, which I know I am, into believing, I can acquire as much information as I can, and that's all I need to do. But all acquiring more information is giving you the tools, it's giving you the knowledge, right? But it's actually untapped potential. And I think the real power is the doing. Now we talk about wisdom, and I think we get confused with wisdom as being this blanket of knowledge that we have. And I definitely thought that. I thought, I'll just interview people, I'll learn these things, I'll read the books, and that'll sort me out. But like I said before about the roller coaster, the wisdom and the power is in the doing. It's an adjective, right? Wisdom is doing, not knowing. And I think, how do you define learning? I think Hormozy defines learning as same conditions, new behavior. It's when you've learnt from the past by a different behavior with the same conditions. So, for example, a podcast. The wisdom is in knowing that when I start thinking a certain way and my intention goes elsewhere, I have to remind myself to be present. Now, if I just know that is that really wisdom, right? I think the wisdom and the power is being able to, in those moments, use that lesson I've learned and actually do it, the behavior, actually live by it. I think there's a wisdom in that, because is having that knowledge really power? Does that really change your life? I think it's potential. And potential in science, I think it's defined as like stored energy, right? It's like having this ability, this stored power, but it only transforms your life when you actually use it. And how you use it, it's with action and behaviors. So yeah, knowing things is great, but I know from my journey, I just wanted to learn more because I thought that would excuse me from having to actually take action and be courageous and go outside my comfort zone. So I think it is so important to do both. Learn more. It gives you this great ability to take the right steps, to be more intentional, to get the most out of what you're doing. But if you're not taking the action, you're not progressing. And I know for me, I just, for a long time, just kept learning more because I was afraid to take the action. It's like doing a personal training course and learning all these gym movements, but never, going through the discomfort of going to the gym and pushing your body. It's a lot easier to learn than do. But I also believe there is a balance, because there is so much power in taking intentional action. And it's a lesson I'll talk about later, but I think action can't be undone, right? But you can reflect and refine your action over time. But I think it is so important just to keep taking action and doing. And this is something that everyone will agree with. You don't understand what the best decision is until you've taken action, right? Every time I've done a podcast, I've thought, fuck, it would have been really cool to navigate that conversation, but I couldn't think about it. I couldn't anticipate that that's where it would have gone, and that's what would have been an awesome conversation. The perfect information is only available in hindsight, but a lot of us are so scared to take action because we want to have it figured out. We want to have all the steps done because we have such high expectations of ourselves. But you have to let go of that pressure to have it all figured out. You're only going to know the best choice and the lessons and the wisdom from when you do. So it's that process. It's that feedback loop. Take action, learn, refine, pivot, take more action. That feedback loop is the ultimate growth hack. And it takes a lot of self-awareness and courage to keep taking action when you don't have what you want. I don't have this perfect podcast. I don't have this perfect articulation of the words I use. But I go back 2 years and I'm articulating myself so much better. Do I want to have a better way to express myself? Of course. But this is why we're on the journey, to keep reflecting, keep growing. And however that looks for you in your life, adapt it to your circumstances. But I think the key in this lesson is action at the end of the day is the most important thing. That is what transforms your life. Because I know for me, for example, when I listen back to this podcast, I'll think, oh my God, I could have expressed that so much better. And that happens all the time. You know what I mean? Every experience we go through, we look back and we go, it would have been so much easier, or it would have been so much better if I did it this way. But if you didn't actually do the action, you wouldn't have learnt that. So if you keep refining those processes over time, the product, your performance, whatever you're doing in your life becomes so much better. Just like this podcast the episodes have performed so much better in terms of the actual value of the conversation because it has refined itself slowly over time. And that's the real hallmark of it. It's just consistency. So consistent action over time. I know it's a cliche, but the lesson is learning more is only the first part. Taking action is the power. And there, like I said, so much lessons from just action. And I try to skip all the action by learning from people. But little do you know, you actually truly learn when you do it yourself. But it's good to get a bit of insight from people. Okay. Number 5. And this by far is the most powerful one. And it applies to everyone. Freedom comes from letting go, not gripping tighter. Now, this will look different in everyone's life, but for me, because that's all I can speak to, when I went down the self-development pathway, I got a real taste for what you had to do to feel good in terms of I moved my body, I started reading books, I got obsessed with this idea of, breath work, meditation, all these things I had to do. And what I learned is that was the best way for me to start, was to just do so much action. But what I didn't realize at the time and what I learned now is I was just gripping really tight to who I thought I had to be. I thought I had to do all these things, not because I really wanted to, but that's because I thought that that's what you would do if you were that sort of person. I think most people's mental health problems and the biggest improvements people can make from their life is not actually by doing more. It's letting go of who they think they have to be. I think the key to happiness, which we all talk about, is authenticity and this freedom and peace we feel from when we are who we are. But I think at the start of everyone's self-development journey, I know for me, I can't actually say this for everyone, but you grip really tight to this ideal future self, like I have to do this. And when you don't do it, it becomes this ammunition that you use against yourself. And you really guilt yourself and shame yourself into doing all these things. And I think for a lot of people, they need that. They just need to stop being lazy and stop the excuses and change their life. But after a certain period of time, when you have the good behaviors, you've changed your life a lot, you might have grown out of friendship circles, you might have started making these big life moves. I think you actually have to evolve that. You have to let go of that pressure to always be that person. I think that's where self-acceptance comes in. I heard this quote, and people talk about it in self-improvement. They say, discipline is the greatest form of self-love. And I think that's a great lesson early on in the self-development phase when people really need to start doing more work. But I actually disagree with that in parts, because I think that means is a lot of people just guilt themselves into doing things, and they only believe that they are valuable and deserve happiness because they have done certain things. And to me, that just breeds this fragility into their happiness. And it's like, I'm only content with my life and happy with this existence when I do these certain things. And for a lot of people, that mantra keeps them going through the pain and discomfort. And to be honest, it's more important to do the action than get into this conditional happiness thing. But I think it's an evolution in your journey, is understanding that it's more important to let go of the mask, let go of who you think you need to become or who you need to be to other people, who people think you are, the pressures that we face from society, and uncovering what's beneath that mask. Who is that person that wants to come out? And for me, that's the journey I've been on. I've been uncovering my true authenticity. The conversations I love having with people, the ability to express myself. I've never laughed so much in the past 2 months than I ever have in my life. And I think that's an underspoken thing, laughter. Laughter is like a central piece to joy. And I just feel like haven't laughed that much in the last year before that, because I was putting this pressure on myself to be this serious guy who was in self-improvement. And now it's like, I can have both. I can be this guy who loves mindset, but I can be present. I don't have to put pressure on myself to be someone. And I let go of that. But I was gripping so tightly to this vision of myself, who I thought I had to be. And I think it's an evolution. And for a lot of people, they just need to get off the couch and stop making the fucking excuses. But if you have done so much of that and you still feel this ammunition against yourself, you feel like you shame yourself for doing the wrong thing, eating the wrong foods, not going to the gym, not following this script of who you have to be, there's so much power in exploring the story about yourself and learning to let go of this mask and underneath that mask. Because I think when you really embody something, like I'm a healthy person, I truly believe that. I'm a kind person. I have all these really strong values because I know who I am. That's who I am. The choices that I make on a consistent basis reflect that, because that's what I know makes me feel good. And I don't do that to be somebody, to have people say certain things about me. And I think for a lot of people, underneath the mask of self-discipline, self-improvement is a lot of fear of what people are going to think of them, what people are going to say about them if they don't follow this script of who they are. So I think over time, it's important to reflect on, at your core, who you want to become and who you actually are. And that's a long process to figure out. It's saying I'm still figuring out. But the reason I touch on joy and laughter is because that is like the best emotion in life to feel, is that peace that comes with just being so present and having a good time, not thinking about the future, not thinking about what's happened, being so captivated by this moment and sharing a laugh, whatever that looks like. And that doesn't come from gripping tighter. To me, it doesn't. I get true fulfillment from when I let go of those masks. And yes, I know for me, if I don't take action, if I'm not exercising, if I'm not, making progress towards some of my dreams, eventually, it does start to come back to me. And that's still a journey I'm on. But that's because I have this purpose now to do more. And it comes from that place of love, not fear. And that voice and that push I have isn't this push of fear. It's a push of love. And I think it's a journey I'm still on. I'm still figuring out. But I feel so much better about my life now that I've started to let go of that pressure I put on myself. But I'm taking even more action than I ever have. Don't think you're just going to... I think a lot of people fear that if they let go of that pressure they put on themselves, they're going to get complacent, stop taking action. But I take more action than I ever have. And I do it more intentionally because it's from a place of love. And I'm building better relationships. I'm doing the things I want to do. And I'm so much happier and more content by letting go. And it's a long journey, but I think if you can resonate in some way, there's so much power in that. Number 6. You're underestimating how much you can grow. Keep pushing. I think we underestimate what the accumulation of our behaviors right now and what that's going to do for our life. I think we're so everyone listening right now, you reflect back on your life and you'll think 5 years ago, you'll think, I've changed so much. I was doing this. I used to believe this about myself and the world, and now all my beliefs have evolved. And you look, and I'll say, where do you think you'll be in 5 years with those same beliefs, same visions of the world, yourself? I guarantee you will underestimate how much you're going to change. And there's so much power in this because I think it gives you a confidence through the discomfort that it's worthwhile, but don't get caught up in promising yourself all of it. I think the power in this is it's a really great mantra to have, but I just believe it's a great lesson to believe in because I think we get really caught up in what's happening right now and not being able to believe and trust that things will work out for us and we deserve an amazing quality of life and good things are coming our way. And I think I've been seduced into that trap so many times, into that victim mentality of this is never going to work out. I was never good enough, or believing that this is the end of the road. And this is the end of the story. So I think it's just a little lesson I've learnt because I've grown so much in the last year, but I probably didn't realize how much I was going to grow. I remember reflecting a year ago and I was thinking, fuck, I've learnt so much this year. I know I'm going to grow a lot, but probably not as much as I just have. And then now I'm looking back and I'm like, holy shit, I wish I could give you an insight into now. And I'm sure the same thing will happen a year, but that's just great motivation and a great little mantra to have, to be like, holy shit, just keep backing yourself, keep enjoying the roller coaster, the ups and the downs, and you're going to come out of the other side so much more wise and stronger. And yeah, it's something to hold into your mind because it helps me embrace the discomfort because I know time keeps going by. And yeah, I think we don't want to go through discomfort because we feel it's not going to give us anything, but you're going to grow so much. Learning, like I said, to embrace those hard times just rebounds you in a positive direction so much more. And it's something you sort of have to learn that lesson in the real world, not just, like I said, it's just knowledge, it's untapped energy until you truly align it with your life. Number 7, the person you want to become is a series of behaviors stacked together. Now, a lot of us have this vision of who we're going to become, whether that's confident, successful, rich, whoever you want to become in life. There's often a word that we like, confident. Like, I never used to be a confident guy, or even just like ambitious or assured of himself. Secure. That's probably a really good word. I never used to believe that I was truly secure and aligned or had a real understanding of who I was. I really wanted that because I had been having so much doubt, and throughout my journey, like doubt and this mental turmoil that I put myself through. So I really strive towards wanting to become more assured of myself and have an understanding of who I am and what I want to get out of life. The power in this lesson that have learnt recently is whenever you want to become somebody, you want to aspire to grow in a certain direction, and people categorize you in a certain way. Like, people categorize me in a certain way. Like, I don't know whether it's kind or positive. Let's say positive. Now, the reason we're talking about a series of behaviors is because I look through the lens now of what would a positive person do, or what would a confident person do. And whenever I come to different circumstances or different moments in time where it's uncomfortable or even comfortable, whatever it is, sometimes I reflect on who I'm trying to become. And I think, what would that person do? I've done this a lot in a relationship context, and it's really held me in good stead because we get so caught up with the emotions. It's really hard to pull ourselves out from that moment, take a bird's eye view, and make a rational, logical decision. I mean, I struggle with that all the time. But something I've got better at is, who do I want to become? Because when you bring that self-awareness, you give yourself a choice. And I don't win that battle all the time. I still fall into negative beliefs, probably subconsciously, and take the easier road. It's not about getting it perfect. It's just about giving yourself a choice to become better. Because I think when you give yourself all of those choices, you'll start to take a few, you'll start to push the needle forward in a positive direction. And eventually, with enough courage, with enough confidence over time, you'll get to where you want to go. But isolating what a confident person would do is so important. And I did that with a podcasting sense. I was getting really nervous for podcasts, like I talked about earlier. And I struggled to be myself before and after the podcast. Like, I would struggle to embrace pauses. I would feel like I'd always have to talk. I felt like I couldn't have a good chat before and after. I was like, let's just do the podcast, whatever. Like, I was so uncertain. I was like, that's not the person I want to be. I want to be secure and confident and present and enjoy the moment. So I thought, what would a person do who actually does do those things? And I looked at the exact behaviors, and it was embrace the pauses, have good conversations before and after, really listen to who they are and not worry about what I'm doing. And all that did was bring awareness to what a confident, secure person would do. And I tried my best to align my behaviors to that. And over time, it became a habit. It became what I did. And it sounds really simple, and it's hard because you still get those doubts and worries come up. But I think it's a really good mental cue to bring into your life, and understand that the person you want to become is not just this word. It's not just a confident person. It's a series of behaviors that are put together. It's a bundle of these specific individual behaviors. It's like, what does a healthy person do? It's eats certain foods, drinks certain water, goes to bed. It's like a series of these behaviors stacked together. The more you break it down, the more clarity you have on what you need to do. And when you have clarity, it becomes really transparent to whether you're doing it and whether you're embodying that sort of that value, that version of who you want to become. So I think breaking it down provides the clarity, which allows you to be very clear on whether you're doing it or not. So yeah. This next lesson, number 8, this is probably the most pertinent to my self-development journey. As you said, and as you can probably guess from how I'm speaking, very logical, rational. I like words, and a lot of the time I've used this, call it what you want, whether it's a skill or just how I am. It's funny because I think that my ability to express myself or use words or be an intellectual, whatever you want to call it. I love that side of me, but it's also been my greatest downfall. It's like, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's like people who wear their heart on their sleeve and they're very like emotional. It's like, it's a blessing because it's like they're so authentic and show up, but it's a curse because like they're just so reactive. So it's like, on the other side of one of my greatest strengths is the downfall, which is I use my overthinking as a way to avoid how I'm feeling. I'll just talk about it. I'll just play it out in my head. I'll catastrophize every moment. I'll avoid sitting in the feeling. I'll just think the feeling. And if I think the feeling, I don't have to feel the feeling. Oh boy, we've learnt the hard way that is not a long-term strategy. But I think there is so much power in understanding the emotion. So the lesson is understanding why you feel a certain way doesn't entitle you to skip the feeling phase. Okay, why did I go down studying psychology at university? Why did I do all those things? I couldn't pin it down at that moment. Like I just did it. I had a curiosity, like a learning and a love for like the mind, but what was deeper than that? I feel like it's a little deeper than that. And for me, it was because I really didn't understand why I was so emotional as a child, so angry, so reactive, why I felt misunderstood by the world. I believed the story that if I could understand why I feel certain ways, or why I am the way I am, why people treat me certain ways, that I could avoid feeling some of the uncomfortable emotions, like frustrated, misunderstood, the disappointment I felt about falling short of my expectations. If I could pinpoint down on a really, really deep psychological level why I am the way I am, I would avoid the feeling phase. It's been a real big evolution to understand that overthinking is underfeeling and truly embodying that, because anytime I'm overthinking, I'm like, Egan, you're trying to skip that feeling phase, brother. And it's like, it's so important to understand why you feel certain ways, because a lot of us don't have that. And I didn't for a long time. I didn't understand why I felt so disappointed in myself or why I felt so shit. And a lot of people don't have the words to describe it. Like I said, we don't have that emotional articulation. It's just, I feel shit. But I think along the journey, you start to develop that emotional language, and that really allows you to build a relationship between your thoughts, your behaviors, and your feelings. And that's so important. But the lesson here is, just because you understand why you feel a certain way and you have that awareness of this happened, this person did this to me, or I did this to myself, whatever it is, that doesn't mean you can skip that feeling phase. And I know for a logical person, it can be hard to surrender to that reality, but it's a habit I fall back into, overthinking. But having that awareness now is such a great little reminder that feelings is what governs us. We are run by our feelings. We are run by our limbic system. That's what drives us. It's emotions. And I think our prefrontal cortex, our thinking, is our greatest tool, but it can also be the thing that robs us of life and emotion, because emotion is life. Yet the reason I wasn't happy as I could be, and I prevented myself from feeling the richness of life, like joy, laughter, love, peace, is because I try to escape the hard feelings, and in doing so, I compromise the greatest feelings, because life is a roller coaster. You need to have those ups and downs to understand the emotion and understand yourself. And it takes a lot of courage to really embrace that. And it's still something that we're all figuring out along the way. But using your mind is important, but also tapping into your heart is equally, if not way more important, to living a really, really authentic life. Number 9, most problems can be fixed from expanding the timeline. Now, we've talked a lot about time, and the reason I think time is so powerful is because it relates a lot with spirituality. And I think a lot of people who get caught in their own head, it's all to do with time. They're thinking about the future, or they're bringing a story from the past into their present moment, which robs them of their happiness. Recently, I went through a period where I couldn't be happy, and it wasn't like my life was shit. I was like, I have the most incredible life. I have so many wonderful things to be happy about. And a week before that, I was so happy about them. Why am I suddenly not able to enjoy the present moment? And I'm grateful that I have these skills to do it, because I think a lot of people can get really stuck in that. And I used to get so stuck in that. So having a strong mindset is just having the tools and the ability to pull yourself out of that. I was putting so much pressure on myself, and a lot of it did stem from comparison. I started looking at people, and it's funny, you think like, oh, this guy understands mindset, he has all the answers. But look, I'm just a human on a roller coaster of a life just like you, and I'm figuring out. And subconsciously, I was comparing myself. Not even consciously. I just kept looking at people who had this podcasting dream, and I fell into that trap. But I was like, geez, you have so much, yet you're feeling so little happiness. And it didn't last too long, because I was able to pull myself out. But I was like, geez, Egan, it just reminded me again how powerful mindset is and how important it is to be grateful. But it was because I was so short-term minded. I was like, I don't have this dream life. And I was like, why do I need a dream life right now? Why can't I just appreciate? And it was because I developed all these stories about why I needed certain things right now. And I put all this pressure onto myself. And the lesson here is I started to expand my timeline. I said, look, I'm only 22, now 23. And what is an age? It's just a random number anyway. Like, why am I putting this pressure on myself? Why am I robbing myself of this happiness? It was a conversation I had for a long time, over like a week period, trying to really break it down and figure out and use my mind. But I started to surrender to that feeling. I said, look, I feel this way. It's okay. It's normal to feel almost like you're behind and not where you need to be, but you don't need to be anywhere. Why do I have to be anything anyway? Why can't I just be myself on this journey and be happy with that and love what it is? And it was because, like I said, this timeline, I was so fixated on not having what I wanted. And when I talk about expanding the timeline, it's funny because I became more present by allowing myself to expand the timeline of life and be like, look back a little bit. You're just looking forward about where you think you need to be. Look how far you've come. Appreciate some of that growth. Show a bit of love to how far you've come, and look and be like, geez, if you've come this far in the last 2 years, imagine how much further you're going to go in the next 2 years. And it's hard because a lot of us might not like where we're at, and that's okay. I think that's, like we talked about in the earlier lesson, that is fuel. You can use that, but that doesn't mean every step of the way needs to be guilted and shamed. You don't have to hate yourself. I think that's a big thing. You don't have to hate yourself every step of the way. You don't need to have your life figured out. You don't need to have all the answers. And I think for me, that's another reason I went into psychology and all this space, because I thought if I had the answers, it would also mean I would have the keys to happiness. But man, people have so much nowadays. People have so much money, all the cars, all the women, all the social influence in the world, and yet they're miserable. There's countless books and stories about it. So it's like, There's nothing wrong with stopping, taking a breath and realizing this is an incredible journey I'm on, and it doesn't need to be at 100 kilometers an hour every second. That doesn't mean sit on the couch all the time, stop taking action, but it means expand the timeline a little bit. You don't need to be anywhere. Just be where you are now. And the more you learn to master the present moment, like we talked about in that earlier lesson, you'll underestimate how much you're going to grow. Don't shackle yourself down, because that's what I did for so long. Allow life to play out beautifully and allow this evolution of yourself. As soon as you start putting these pressures and expectations, not only do you rob your happiness, but you sort of hold yourself back from evolving in a really authentic way. Okay, the last lesson. I have just realized that we are not going to get through all of this in an hour, so we'll do the first 10. The last one. Now, this one might trigger a few people, but I think if you are triggered in some way, I think it's an important thing to reflect on why. Because I know if I heard this, it would trigger me in a little way. But it's because the reason I've learnt this lesson is because I was the biggest, I was the most guilty of this exact thing. I was so caught up in my mind and having to have everything perfect that I failed to take action. So the lesson is perfectionism exists as an illusion for those without the courage to be wrong. Now, the reason it's taken me so long on this journey to express myself how I really want to express myself and be more comfortable with being myself in different situations is because I was so scared of what people thought. And we all are to some capacity, whether you realize it or not. But this whole journey has been about taking off those masks and those pressures that you put on yourself to be someone for someone else all the time. And I know for a lot of people in life, we use the perfectionism label as the biggest excuse ever. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do that. I'm a perfectionist. Or like, what I mean by that is people don't take action because they say they're a perfectionist. So they're saying that they can't do the thing they want to do because it either isn't the right time, they don't have what they need to do to make it perfect, or they don't believe they're good enough right now. And it's the biggest excuse because, one, you're not going to know all the answers until you do the thing. Two, this perfectionism thing you talk about is bullshit. No one is perfect and it's never going to be. The true failure is not having the courage to put yourself out there. And that's the thing I hold myself to. I'm proud of myself for putting out this podcast. It might not have this incredible growth or quote unquote external success, but to me, it's been a success so much, not only from the relationships and the wisdom and all this power of changing my life, but just because I put myself out there. And how are you defining your success anyway? I think I used to call myself a quote unquote perfectionist, and having perfectionism is a good trait. It's wanting to have excellence, right? But I think people use that label of perfectionism as an excuse to not actually start taking action because they're so scared of what people think. So it's fine to be scared of what people think. I think that's normal. We are wired that way. But I think it's understanding that the key to overcoming that is by stepping into that discomfort, being courageous, and having that interpretation of success changed. Success shouldn't just be about reaching your goals. It should be about having the courage to start to trying to attain them. You know what I mean? Putting yourself out there, that's success. You know, people who start a podcast, I mean, it's not just about, and there's more to just starting. Like, it's not just starting a gym program and doing it for a week. It's truly committing to a proper plan, sticking to your word. I'm going to do this 8-week challenge and I'm going to do every session, or I'm going to try my best to do every session. I'm going to see it through. I promised myself 100 episodes and that's what I did. And I hit that. And to me, that's a great success. And we can all make versions of success that make us feel like it was worthwhile. But I think you just have to ask yourself, why? Why can't I? Or why am I saying these things to myself? a lot of us will come up with a story to why it's not the right time to be doing something. And I've done that all the time. And I still do it in certain aspects of my life. But I think when you have that awareness that this perfectionism is just an excuse, I think then you have to sit with yourself that you don't have the courage to take action. And I think it makes it a lot easier to me. As long as if I know I'm not being courageous, that's a lot more uncomfortable to sit with than it's not perfect, it's not the right time. Because I think it shifts away responsibility to me. It's like, I can't do it. It's not my fault. It's just not to my standard. I'm like, that's exactly what I've thought about so many things in my life. Like, it's not where I want it to be, but only by doing the thing. And we talk about the wisdom is in the doing. It's only by having the courage to keep going and being consistent that it's ever going to reach that quote unquote perfect ideal self. And I just love how this all interconnects, but it's about letting go. Like, where does that perfectionism stem from? What story are you telling yourself about it? Why does it need to be perfect? Why does it need to be anything other than what you're putting out there and and just having the courage to start? Like, it doesn't need to be anything more than that. We're just about to wrap up this hour conversation, and it's funny, like these 10 lessons I've written down, this conversation could have gone a million ways. It could have been expressed better. It could have gone a totally different direction. I could have stuffed up 100 times more. But why does it need to be a certain way? And it all comes down to these stories and these beliefs that we tell ourselves. Like, people are going to think Egan Brooks, this podcaster, isn't that intelligent, or he is, or am I banking on my happiness being on what people believe about me? So I think it's important to understand the stories that you tell yourself, because at the end of the day, this whole journey, this roller coaster of life, it's one big story that our mind, our consciousness is conjuring up. And I think when you have the true embodied understanding that it is you who writes that story, you who writes the script, you who has the capacity to turn your life around the moment you want to, that's when things change. This isn't to guarantee an easy road. This isn't to guarantee it's always going to be hard, always going to be easy. It just guarantees that you're going to take a very worthwhile road, and a road that leads to fulfillment and true authenticity, and all the power that comes from living a life aligned to that. So yeah, I guess that's part 1 wrapped up. I will have to smash out the last 13 lessons in a part 2. I probably underestimated. I think it was a bit naive of me to think I'd get through 23 lessons, which is like less than 3 minutes a lesson, knowing how much I talk. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you learned something. I always find when I hear someone just do a solo podcast and they're just talking for an hour, there's always something that comes to you that really sticks. Something, whether you get triggered by something or something really resonated with you. I think that sometimes our intuition speaking, it's like, there's something in that message that I need to listen to and take on board or explore a bit further. So if there's something that came to mind, I think it's really important to go with that and tap into that feeling or that thought. So yeah, once again, it's my birthday today. Incredibly grateful for all your support. I'm really proud of how far I've come, and I'm proud of all the people I've met along the way who have, continued to live authentically and take life on. So yeah, thanks again. And I'll see you in part 2 for the last 13 lessons of my first 23 years.